1968 was a violent and brutal year in American history. It began with the shocking Tet Offensive in Vietnam and President Lyndon Johnson's surprise announcement that he would not run for re-election. Riots across America followed the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King in April. Senator Robert Kennedy was murdered in June. August saw riots at the Democratic National Convention. Some of the riots were sparked by the Chicago Police Department. Across America, voters were alarmed. Two candidates, Republican Richard Nixon and Independent George Wallace, exploited voter fear. The third candidate, Democrat Hubert Humphrey, called for calm. In early September, fear was winning. Humphrey lagged far behind Nixon in the polls and ran only slightly ahead of Wallace. However, over the next 2 months, Humphrey steadily closed the gap. One day before November's presidential election, the crucial race for California's 40 electoral votes was too close to call. Imagine how history might have changed if Hubert Humphrey won California. No one would have won the 1968 election for President of the United States. No candidate would have the 270 electoral votes needed for victory. This deadlock would have sparked a constitutional and political crisis of historic proportions. George Wallace, former governor of Alabama and winner of 45 electoral votes, might have emerged as the kingmaker.
Thanks, Hugh, and good morning, everyone. Hubert Humphrey and Richard Nixon are still deadlocked at this moment in the count of popular votes in the election of the 37th President of the United States. And the tabulations show there is still doubt whether either one can get the 270 electoral votes needed to win in the Electoral College. If both fail, the choice of the next president would fall to the House of Representatives. With 88% of the popular vote counted, Humphrey had 43% and Nixon had 43%. George Wallace had 14%. The computers gave Nixon 195 electoral votes, Humphrey 166, and George Wallace 45. Again, remember, 270 are needed. The struggle has rivaled the 1960 razor-edge finish when Nixon lost to John F. Kennedy. The outcome hinged on final results still to come from 3 key states, California, Ohio, and Illinois. It has been a night of high tension at the Nixon and Humphrey headquarters.
Clark, what are Nixon's options?
Mr. Vice President, with all states reporting, Nixon has 262 electoral votes, 8 short of the 270 needed to win. You have 231, Wallace has 45. Bob?
Option 1, Nixon finds 8 faithless electors from you or Wallace.
No one has ever got that many. Occasionally one elector defies the voters, maybe 2.
But never 8. Ed?
Only way to make sure is pulse every elector in every state we won.
Now, I tell you, many a senator has looked me in the eye, and I had his vote, and flipped when it counted. Bob, what about Wallace?
We've called every one of Wallace's 45 electors. No one will talk to us.
Good grief, not one?
Either they don't answer, aren't in, or hang up. Every one.
That tells us something. Ed, what's option 2?
Option 2 is the Constitution. The House decides a hung election.
Each state gets 1 vote. The House keeps voting until someone gets 26 states.
Dems have majorities in 26 delegations. Republicans in 19. 5 split down the middle.
If it's a party line vote, you win the White House.
Clark, you doubt a party line vote?
5 of your states were carried by Wallace. Alabama, for example. Another 10 were carried by Nixon. If only one of these 15 states abstains, it's a deadlock.
Gets worse with Mississippi, Georgia, Louisiana.
Strom Thurmond could flip South Carolina from us.
Mr. Vice President, no matter how you cut it, you lose without the South.
Which means we both need George Wallace.
There is a third option. The Senate elects the Vice President. Every senator gets 1 vote.
Senators must pick one of the 2 top vote getters, Ed or Spiro Agnew.
Spiro Agnew has delusions of adequacy.
All Spiro could fall in a barrel of titties and still suck his thumb.
Democrats control the new Senate, 57-43.
Now, I tell you, the Senate could elect Ed as vice president, and the House elect Nixon as president.
That's the 12th Amendment?
It gets more intriguing. If the Senate votes to elect Ed as vice president and the House deadlocks through inauguration, Ed becomes acting president
For how long?
until the House breaks the deadlock.
Goodness. And if the House stays deadlocked?
Ed is acting president until 1972.
How would the country react? Our allies, the Soviets. How does an acting president end a war? Does he nominate acting cabinet secretaries?
Hubert, I hope you don't think that that's something.
Of course not, Ed. The radio is filled with idiot conspiracy theories. Bob, get Pierre Salinger in here. If we don't feed the press something, they'll just make it up.
Got it.
Mr. Vice President, if this election goes to the House and Senate, it will get crazy. Anything could happen. To control the outcome, you must control the deal.
Cut a deal with George Wallace?
Or with Nixon.
I doubt that's possible.
You took 231 electoral votes last night.
If Wallace gives you his 45 electors.
276, you're the president.
It never goes to the House.
Can Wallace just give away electors, Clark?
Normally, no. But Wallace hand-picked every Southern elector. He owns them.
That's why they won't take our calls.
In my opinion, the answer is yes. Wallace can deliver every one. His strategy was stalemate all along.
So, focus on Wallace. What's his price?
First guess. Wallace wants a deal on civil rights. Maybe pork for the South. Tangibles he can claim as victories. Position himself to run for real in 72.
Wallace craves winning more than governing. His hunger is power, not policy.
The better question is, what are you willing to give George Wallace?
To keep Richard Nixon out of the White House.
To put you in the White House?
If you want something badly, that's how you get it.
Define badly.
Would you trade the presidency for your right arm?
Literally, of course not.
George Wallace would trade his arm, hell, his soul for the White House in a second.
Be under no illusions. Wallace's price will hurt.
Bob, invite George Wallace to Waverly. I'll ask the man. He knows what he wants.
What if he starts negotiating with me?
But he won't. Listen to me. I will not add a single ring to the lynching tree of civil rights. Beyond that, everything's on the table. I took Lyndon Johnson's crap for 4 years. The election is mine.
What if Wallace wants too much?
For the presidency of the United States? To end a war? Keep a liberal Supreme Court? Stop Richard Nixon once and for all? What would you pay, Clark? What would any man pay?
What does it profit a man to gain the whole world when he forfeits his soul?
Matthew 16:26. I don't want the whole world.
Just the United States.
My soul is intact. Our United States may not be under President Richard Nixon. I'm ready to compromise goals, but not my presidency. Let's hear what the governor of Alabama has to say. Elvis is making a comeback. McDonald's has a new hamburger, a Big Mac.
You are what you eat.
Oh my God, the election is even on the sports page. Joe Namath thinks we should revote.
Joe Namath is cute.
Cute don't win football games or elections.
It certainly helped Jack Kennedy. I could get used to this.
Just sitting in the parlor. Mm-hmm. Would you rather I still ran a drugstore?
I'm very proud of you.
Goodness me, that's a political non-answer.
Well, you haven't been home much for 20 years. Thank God we had kids early.
3 wonderful kids, thanks to you.
You've been gone ever since 48. When little Bob had cancer surgery, you weren't there.
The civil rights bill was on the floor. I'd just broken a 3-month filibuster, the longest in Senate history. Oh, I couldn't leave.
That made it acceptable, but not easy. I married a world-class politician. My mistake. My greatest joy. Go figure.
Would you do it again?
In all our marriage, 32 years, you've never asked me that.
I suppose I knew the answer.
Hubert, I loved you from our first waltz. The answer is yes, but with regrets. You understand Washington. You know its currents and its tempo. I don't. And what I don't understand, I fear.
I fear tomorrow.
Scared of George Wallace?
I can't read him.
Segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever.
He's not a simple racist.
Are you sure?
10 million Americans voted for him. 10 million, 145 electoral votes. Made himself a kingmaker.
You're running for president, not king.
George Wallace is the most powerful man in America. Bob Strauss says, you'll love this. Wallace is like a $20 whore on a nickel night.
How did we get here?
2 reasons. First, I created this mess. I should have broken with Lyndon Johnson on the Vietnam years ago. Heck, Hanoi and everyone on the Hill knew I opposed the war.
You stayed loyal to your president.
It undercut all political credibility. Vietnam ruined Lyndon and trapped me in a corner. Now I either deal with George Wallace or lose to Richard Nixon. Either way, I go down.
What's the second reason?
People are scared. Riots, busing, jobs. Wallace speaks to them. Fear always sells.
You wanted me, sir?
I've never talked with Wallace. Seen him on TV, but that's caricature. You know him. Tell me about the man.
Did you know Wallace was a boxer? Fought Golden Gloves as a kid. Bantamweight.
Very good.
2-time straight champ. But that's not what should scare you.
Tell me.
When Wallace was 16, he fought a man from Montgomery. The other guy was older, faster, stronger. Gave Wallace a hell of a beating. Big welts above and below both eyes. Could hardly see. Cuts on his forehead. Blood everywhere. The ref almost stopped the fight. But in round 2, the other guy ran out of gas. Wallace laid in with both fists. Drove him to his knees. Won the fight. The next day, Wallace strutted around town with a face that looked like hamburger, underlined by a huge sheep-eating grin. His face gave everybody a warning. Fight me and you fight a rabid dog.
Wallace likes a fight.
Happy as a tick on a fat dog. That's why people love him.
He'll want a first-round knockout.
You either offer a quick deal
or bob and weave, extend the bout. Think he's more prone to bargain later on?
Unless he's so frustrated he cuts a quick deal with Nixon. Then you're done.
Keep him talking, but keep him here. Thanks, Bob.
How's he holding up?
I'm not sure. Hubert has worked for the presidency his entire life. Now, I don't know if he really wants to win. He's still beating himself up for riding Lyndon's horse on Vietnam. He's disgusted with himself. Now he either deals with Wallace or loses to Nixon.
You think Hubert and Wallace are really different?
Polar opposites. Hubert fought to open schools. Wallace stood in the schoolhouse door. Hubert hates everything Wallace stands for.
Do you know J.L. Chestnut?
Sure, Negro civil rights attorney.
His mother taught school for 40 years in Selma, Alabama. She voted for Wallace.
What the hell for?
Under Wallace, her school got new textbooks. She got 3 pay raises.
Did that to prove separate was equal?
Maybe. I failed the mind reading test a long time ago. A man's soul is opaque. Only actions are obvious. Did you know the NAACP endorsed Wallace in 1958?
This conversation is getting surreal.
He was a county judge then, most liberal judge in Alabama.
That's damning with faint praise.
You heard of Tuskegee Institute?
The colored college? Don't tell me.
Wallace was on the board of trustees.
At least he's not a graduate.
Wallace ran for governor in 58. Said every man, regardless of color, was equal under the law.
And he lost.
Big time. The winner was endorsed by the Ku Klux Klan.
John Patterson.
Wallace swore he'd never be out-niggered again. Won the governorship in 62. Biggest landslide in Alabama history.
You want sympathy for Wallace?
No, just understanding. His moral compass is ambition. Never forget that.
What I can't forget is how he wins. Promise everything and holler nigger.
Populist, Paranoid politics. That's who we're dealing with.
Governor, thank you for flying up to see us.
My pleasure, Mr. Vice President. November in Waverly, Minnesota. Colder than a cast iron outhouse.
My pop used to say, colder than a banker's heart. Just wait until February. I never thought our race would end this way. Historic. Can I get you something?
Any bourbon in there? No, I'm fine. You paid for the plane ride. What can I do for you?
You know what I need.
My uncle sold used cars, told me number one rule of sales: whoever talks price first loses. I want what you want. I want your electors.
That's not on the table.
I'll put you on the Supreme Court, make you Chief Justice.
I won 3 times your votes.
You can name half the patronage jobs.
You're not serious.
Serious as cancer. You want a shitstorm in the House of Representatives? I can block you there. When you and Nixon stalemate, I become the compromise candidate.
You're a Democrat.
And a conservative. Repubs will like me more than you.
You think our party will accept George Corley-Wallace?
Better me than Richard Milhouse Nixon.
Will the country accept you?
The country wants a law and order conservative. Me and Nixon took 57%, so it's me or him. But let's talk about you. Earl Warren retires. You become Chief Justice. You what, 57 years old?
You know exactly how old I am.
That puts you running the court for 20, 30 years. John Marshall, Earl Warren, Charles Evans Hughes, Hubert Horatio Humphrey. Chief Justice make history, more than some presidents.
There's a small matter you missed. I'm not a lawyer.
Nothing says you have to be. Fact is, Americans think it's time for non-lawyers on the court. Stan Reed didn't go to law school. FDR still put him on the court. Retired only 10 years ago. Hell, you've written enough laws. Who cares if you passed a bar exam?
You're a lawyer. You don't want the court?
I do.
I'll offer the same deal to you, just the one you offered me, Chief Justice.
That's a turd rolled in cracker crumbs. Senate would never confirm me.
That's what Muriel said, except for the turd.
Mrs. Humphrey is real smart.
We're back at square one.
You don't want the House to decide this election. I can win there. So can Nixon. You can't. You want to negotiate? Fine. How about Ed resigns for health reasons? You nominate me under the 25th Amendment as your vice president. You promise in writing to resign in 2 years. I'll become president. He'll run for the nomination again in 72.
As Lyndon would say, that dog don't hunt.
I don't see you walking away.
Nixon take that deal?
Vice President Nixon put a fair offer on the table.
One you could accept?
I'm the dumb farmer in the dark. Everybody knows what I have to give, but what are you prepared to pay?
I could bring you into the cabinet.
And?
And what else do you want?
Mr. Humphrey, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. I put 2 options on the table. I want a lot, but I'm giving you the presidency of the United States. When you're prepared to bargain, call me. Electors vote in 6 weeks.
I'd like to continue our conversation first.
Talk to your friends, to Mrs. Humphrey. Think over what you want and what you're prepared to pay.
I want the presidency.
Last time this happened was in 1876.
Hayes Tilden.
Rutherford B. Hayes versus Samuel J. Tilden. You know Tilden was a faggot.
Hayes won by 1 vote.
Because he agreed to end Reconstruction, pull federal troops out of the South. Now that was a huge price.
Replace slavery with Jim Crow.
You could say that, but it's beside the point.
Which is?
The presidency is expensive. Seat in the cabinet, don't cut it.
What will?
Maybe more than you're willing to offer.
Try me.
It's your turn, Mr. Vice President. Make it big, but don't take long,
What did the president say?
Lyndon will keep Texas electors in line. He told me they've been sucking at the Democratic tit for years. They can't stop now because the milk is sour from what the cow's been eating.
How graphic. What about dealing with Wallace?
Lyndon hates Nixon more than me.
Hubert, the president does not hate you.
He thinks I'm weak. I let him walk all over me in Vietnam. Biggest mistake in my life.
You stood up for civil rights 20 years ago, led the entire Democratic Party when you were only a mayor, proposed the Peace Corps before Jack Kennedy ever thought about it. First Democratic senator from Minnesota since the Civil War. You may be open-minded to a fault, Hubert, but you are not weak.
What deal should I make?
Why make one at all?
No deal. No presidency.
The people did not vote for you.
They didn't vote for Dick Nixon either.
They voted conservative. People have a right to decide for themselves. Americans expect their votes to count.
And why an electoral college at all?
Great question. If you cut a backroom deal with George Wallace...
Politics is all deals. Lyndon Johnson is the master.
The master of what? Deceit? Vietnam? Credibility gap? Is that your model?
This is no morality play. Either win or lose. Deal or fold.
Whatever it takes to win. That's not you, Hubert. That's not how I envisioned you as president.
In Europe, parties make deals, form coalitions all the time.
So you are forming a coalition with George Wallace? Segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever.
Yes, I have to, or Richard Nixon becomes your president.
Whom the majority of Americans voted
Not
for.
a majority.
A majority if Wallace stayed out of it.
But he didn't. That's reality.
I understand the real world, Hubert. What I don't understand is twisting rules to take what voters didn't give you.
I'm not twisting anything. Rules are rules. Electors are free to vote for whomever they wish. That's our Constitution. Wallace is a Democrat. His electors are Democrats. I want them to vote for the Democratic candidate.
At what cost?
That's the question. And it will be steep, I fear.
Can it be too steep?
Yes,
As long as you recognize what too steep means.
and walk away.
Weak men never walk away. Weak men either freeze or run.
If the House of Representatives decides this election, deals and counter-deals will swarm thick as flies. The question isn't whether to make a deal. A deal is inevitable. The only questions are who makes the deal and at what price.
How will you know if the price is right?
Dick Nixon will pay whatever he needs to pay. He'll do anything to win the White House.
Are you sure? Vice President Nixon didn't challenge the vote back in 1960. He could have.
Valid point. Mayor Daley stole Chicago for Kennedy. But that was 8 years ago. This is Nixon's last chance.
Never say never.
Tom Dewey ran twice and lost both times he was finished.
Tom was Swiss cheese, not sharp and full of holes.
Adlai ran twice and lost both times.
William Jennings Bryant ran 3 times.
And lost every time.
So why will Dick Nixon do anything this time?
Lyndon Johnson was close to a deal with Hanoi. End the war. But Saigon torpedoed it. Nixon got word to President Hugh Saigon would get a better deal after the election from Nixon.
You're sure of that?
We have it on tape. Lyndon had lots of phones taped.
Why didn't the president expose Nixon?
Lyndon told me to do it. I said no.
You said no to Lyndon Johnson?
You don't tap phones of political opponents. It's illegal. It's just wrong.
How did Lyndon react?
How do you guess? Hell, he tapes his own phone. Says it's for history.
As Faulkner said, history is, not was.
Requiem for a nun. I'm not dead yet.
But back to Nixon.
If Nixon torpedoed peace to get elected, imagine what he'd do after he's elected.
So that means what? You're justified to do anything to stop him?
And justifies the means.
Machiavelli, outcome determines morality.
Machiavelli died in exile. His prince died of syphilis.
Every philosophy has its flaws.
Dick Nixon is so sure he's right, he can't see the other side. Anyone who opposes him must be an enemy, a communist. Oh, that's dangerous in a president. It could get us all killed.
Why are more and more millions of Americans turning to Governor Wallace? Follow as your children are bussed across town.
As president, I shall, within the law, turn back the absolute control of the public school systems to the people of the respective states.
Why are more and more millions of Americans turning to Governor Wallace?
open a little business and see what might happen.
As president, I will stand up for your local police and firemen in protecting your safety and property.
Why are more and more millions of Americans turning to Governor Wallace? Watch your hard-earned tax dollars sail away to anti-American countries.
As president, I will halt the giveaway of your American dollars and products to those nations that aid our enemies.
Wallace has the courage to stand up for America. Give him your support.
Wallace wants a national stage.
You mean civil rights?
That's part of it. Wallace ran on three things: race, states' rights, law and order.
What do they have in common?
Wallace adored Franklin Roosevelt.
I doubt the feeling would have been mutual.
They shared a common base, the working class. Everything they did, FDR and Wallace, resonates with the same people.
FDR never passed a civil rights bill.
Never even proposed one.
Here's exit polling from Ohio and Michigan, big union states. In 1964, we got 80% of the labor vote. This year, down to 50.
We're losing the working man.
Why?
Working people don't trust liberals. Put it this way. How many liberals died defending factory workers?
Liberals fight for values like civil rights.
The Freedom Riders.
In America, property has more rights than people. Workers have no power over their jobs. FDR changed that. Gave the little guy a sense of control. They loved him for it. Harry Truman, too. Wallace taps the same well.
Like Huey Long. Get people a job and ideology, it don't matter.
My father used to say people to know that you care before they care what you do.
Exactly. If voters trust you, they'll listen to anything you say.
Without trust, you could give the Sermon on the Mount and no one would hear.
It's a dialogue with the deaf.
Republicans are trying to be the party of the working man and the corporate shareholder. It won't work.
Republicans read the Wall Street Journal. Democrats read the sports page.
And liberals read the New Yorker. Corporate America wants to write the rules, play the game, and referee it too. Unfettered capitalism will destroy working class America. The only counterweight is government.
The working man is adrift. Pay him a little attention and he's yours.
I won't change my tune from liberal to populist.
If Republicans sink their teeth into the working class, we'll pay hell to get them back.
Most working class voters are emotional and ignorant, easy to scare, a propagandist's dream.
You can fool some of the people all of the time. Those are the ones to concentrate on.
Half-truths become myths, and then myths become common knowledge.
America's political split is economic. Republicans want cheap labor and expensive capital. Democrats want the opposite.
In England, the two parties aren't liberal and conservative. They're labor and conservative.
Not long ago, Republicans and Dems each had liberal and conservative wings.
Now, I tell you, we could not have passed the Civil Rights Act without Ev Dirksen.
A greater percentage of Republicans voted for the Civil Rights Act than Democrats. Voting Rights Act, too.
Republicans are trying to rebrand themselves. Instead of the party of big money and farms, they want to be the conservative party and paint us as the liberals.
The solid South is a given. The question is, will the South be solid Democrat or solid Republican?
We can't reverse ourselves on race.
So re-emphasize middle-class jobs, a level playing field.
Wallace is coming in tomorrow. Let's hear him out. Right now, I need to sleep. That's enough for now. You mentioned the cabinet. Pick whatever you want. The big three: State, Defense, Treasury.
I'll take Treasury, but not for me.
Who?
John Connally. He'll take on Wall Street, the conglomerates. Stop this free trade crap.
I could do that. His team, though, comes from me.
Wrong message. You want banks and corporations to shit in their Cadillacs when they see Connally. Way to show that is to give Connally a free hand. Unless you catch John with a dead girl or a live boy, you don't touch him and his team for 4 years.
That's a tough ask.
It gets tougher. State of Pentagon don't work for me. Can you see George Wallace as a diplomat? Hell, I'd probably start another war with England.
What then?
I'll take Attorney General.
You as AG? Oh, that's not possible.
Of course it is, and it's to your benefit. Yep. There's a professor at Auburn University, Jew boy from Atlanta, real smart. Tells me people are leaving the North, heading south. We're gaining voters. That means more electoral votes, more congressmen.
You're telling me to board the Southern train.
I'm telling you, the Democratic Party fails without the South.
We say one nation under God with liberty and justice for all. We are talking about all the people. We must either believe it or quit saying it.
He also tells me the baby boom is done. The average age is going up. What happens when people get old? They get conservative. Shy as a virgin. If his two trends are right, either one, a northern liberal Democratic Party is in trouble. If both are right, you're in the shitter.
You're making a bigger point.
Under Roosevelt, the political divide was money. Republicans had the land and the banks, trust funds, corporations, employers. Democrats were working men, employees. You Harvards want to change that. You want all Democrats to be liberal. That will kill the Democratic Party.
History is on the side of the liberals.
History? From Abe Lincoln to Franklin Roosevelt, how many Democratic presidents? Grover Cleveland and Woodrow Wilson. That's it. And Wilson was a Southerner, a Klan-loving racist. FDR changed all that, made Democrats the party of the common man. You want history? In the last 36 years, every president but one has been a Democrat. We own Congress, too.
We're building on FDR. We just elected Shirley Chisholm, the first female Negro in Congress.
You could have 50 Negro women in Congress. Don't matter for shit if you don't have a majority.
Today is on the side of liberals.
Grab any bunch of Americans. Ask each one, you liberal or conservative? Twice as many will say conservative. The U.S. of A is center right. Always has been, always will be.
In '64, LBJ went liberal and won by a landslide, 61% of the vote.
And only 2 years later, the backlash started. '66, you lost 4 to 7 seats in the House. 2 weeks ago, Tricky Dick and me took 57% of the vote. Beat you like a rented mule. That's a landslide in the other direction.
You haven't seen a shift since the 50s?
Yeah, in this life, you want to make enemies, change things. What are liberals always trying to do? Change things.
Everyone wants to slow down change.
More Americans like corn chips than caviar. Hell, they elect communists in Europe. We lynch them here.
Lynching is not one of your better arguments.
Mr. Humphrey, keep worrying about what you already got. I won't touch your Civil Rights Act, your Voting Rights Act. They can stay.
Thank you.
Like President Roosevelt, Democratic Party has to help working folk. People that get a paycheck. Do that, you can get anything you want.
We already are the party of working people.
Really? Must have forgot to tell working men. Liberals see you as their party. They're protectors. Working folk don't.
Negroes are working folk.
Then fight for Negro working rights, not just Negro civil rights.
Equality means equality for all, no exceptions, no plantation politics.
Screw the politics of race. Fight the politics of class.
We're wondering again, what do you want?
AG. I'll pick my entire team, top to bottom, and no more Negro rights laws or executive orders. No forced busing. That's my third ask.
Ever?
For your first term, I can't stop stupidity after that.
White supremacy is over. If I put a lid on civil rights, this nation will explode.
If you don't put a lid on your liberal ego, you will destroy the Democratic Party.
You are trying to excuse segregation.
Hell yes, I'm a segregationist, but not a hypocrite. Rich Yankees are both.
Would you usurpers like hot chocolate?
Muriel, extraordinary timing.
Ms. Humphrey, you run a gracious home.
Governor, you are always welcome. We have white chocolate if you prefer.
No, ma'am, I was raised on dark chocolate.
I've always been taken by how similar you two are. Both born in small towns. In fact, Hubert's birthplace was named Wallace. Both Methodist, both Democrats, both families were in medicine, both grew up poor.
We had screen doors and enough to eat. I thought we were middle class.
When Hubert went to Louisiana State University, you were at the University of Alabama.
Alabama had the better football team.
Yes, but the University of Minnesota won the national championship.
Both of us married a lovely woman.
There are benefits to loving a politician. They always say the nicest things. You boys call if you need a refill.
I'm so sorry you lost your wife.
Lurleen hated politics.
Extraordinary for a woman elected governor.
Will Mrs. Humphrey ever run for office?
Heavens, no. Out of the question.
You know any Southern Republicans?
Sure.
Are they pro-integration?
No.
That's right. Split between Southern Republicans and Southern Democrats is not race. Both parties out-niggered the other before Jim Crow could fly. The difference is money.
So, to win the South, I need to focus on money, not race.
The way to a man's vote is through his pocket. You put food on a man's table, you own that man's vote.
Anything else?
Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. It expires in 2 years. Let it die. States write voting rights laws, not the federal government.
Selma created that bill. Alabama troops cracked heads under your orders, spilled blood. You were governor.
TV created that bill. Bull Connor, Edmund Pettus Bridge. People couldn't stand little Negro boys and girls being slapped around.
They were trampled, blown up, and gassed.
TV is a weapon. I didn't realize how powerful. Martin King did.
President Johnson learned the hard way in Vietnam.
TV is a two-sided blade. TV shows all your welfare money, billions of dollars, wasted on lazy Negroes who won't work. Yep. As governor, I was sued by a woman who said we weren't giving her enough free money. She thinks payday is when the welfare check arrives. When did America switch from the land of opportunity to the land of something for nothing?
You're not being fair.
Say whatever you want. It won't matter. People believe pictures, what they see. TV shows hard-earned money draining down the gutter to people who won't work.
That isn't true.
But it looks true. Waste is inevitable, like shit trails a goose. Makes great TV, drama, violence, just like marching and singing and fighting in the street. Southerners already distrust government. Now you're giving them more bullets to shoot at you.
Leadership for civil rights has to come from the White House, or it will come from the streets.
Then lead, damn it. Don't dictate. You know, when you put Connolly and me in the cabinet with our own teams, when you halt new Negro laws, when you let Section 5 die, you signal respect to the South. You give people time to digest change.
You've had 100 years.
You tell hard-working, God-fearing people the Democratic Party will get back to its #1 job. Help decent people get a decent life. Protect the backs of working people from the rich, the banks, the corporations. You lead people at a gut level.
You talk jobs, but people hear race.
I tried to talk about good roads and good schools, and nobody listened. But when I talk niggers, they stomp the floor.
When I accepted the nomination of our party, your party, I said that winning the presidency is not worth making a compact with extremism.
So I'm extremist. Yeah, you called me the apostle of hate and racism. I never once attacked you personally. In that boring speech, you pledged to unify the country. How you doing that? By ramming Negro laws through Congress, sending federal marshals down south, forced busing, more welfare. All you do is split the country, split the party, and let the big money boys steal the show.
Segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever.
If I hadn't said that, I wouldn't be here today. And you would have lost in a landslide to Dick Nixon.
Tell that to Medgar Evers. Tell it to Martin Luther King.
You voted for the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, did you not?
Yes.
How many boys died in Vietnam because of that vote?
As of this morning, 36,450.
With more dead to come. We all have a worm in our apple.
We are all worms in the end, Governor. If I agree to your conditions, what do I get?
All 45 of my electors vote for you next week.
You guarantee that?
Each man gave me his word. Loyalty matters in the South. Hell, Southerners are loyal to their brand pickup truck.
And if something goes haywire with the Electoral College and the election still goes to the House of Representatives?
You're saying some of your electors are soft?
Not at all, but I can't predict the future.
I help you with Southern Dems in the House. That's all I can do.
Governor, you've been preparing for this conversation for some time. Your offer is tempting. May I have a few days to weigh my answer?
Electors meet in 9 days, and I need a couple days to corral my people.
Will Friday work for you?
Is a pig's as pork.
I'll take that as a yes. Friday it is. Before you leave, though, I have a question.
Why don't I make the same deal with Richard Nixon?
You read my mind.
2 reasons. First, he's a Republican. He thinks the way to help America is to have business. Help the big boys make big bucks, and enough green will dribble down to the rest of us.
Engine Charlie Wilson, what's good for General Motors is good for America.
I'm a Democrat. I believe the big boys will push the little boys into the gutter unless government puts a collar on them.
And your second reason?
I just don't trust the man. A liar is worse than a thief. Lord knows what kind of decisions he'd make.
Thank you for your frankness.
All that said, my offer is firm. If you don't take it, Dick Dixon will, and more. Don't tempt me.
Governor, this is my closest team. You know Ed Buskey and Clark Clifford.
Governor, I will be straight with you. I won't roll over for the redneck vote.
Senator, that's dumber than a soup sandwich. Mr. Vice President, you got rednecks in Minnesota. Tell them about the redneck vote.
Rednecks don't vote.
Exactly. Rednecks, cowboys, peckerwoods, hicks, hillbillies, crackers, yahoos. They're too stupid, too lazy, or they have too many felonies to vote. Clark, you're from Missouri. Who always votes?
Good old boys.
Exactly. In Alabama, we call them bubbas. Good people. Active in church, community, work hard, pay taxes, and they vote every election. Don't matter if it's for president or the local soil and water district. Senate, House, State House, city, county. Bubba always shows up first Tuesday in November. Primaries too, Senator. Now, I don't give 2 shits about the redneck vote because it don't exist. You should know that.
Governor, what made Bubba change?
No American likes to be told what to do, but Southerners absolutely hate it. It's our Scot-Irish heritage, maybe. We know we're not as rich and educated as Yankees, but we're not your colony. You don't rule us. Freedom means the right to be wrong. Manhood means being ready to fight for what's right. Don't they teach Civil War history in the Minnesota high schools?
I went to school in South Dakota. I thought you called it the War of Northern Aggression.
Oh, that gets a few laughs at the Rotary Club. But too many Southerners died. Too much of the South was destroyed. There was no Marshall Plan after that war. We were on our own. This ain't wordplay. It was an uncivil war.
It ended slavery.
So that's why thousands of boys who never owned a slave fought like men and died like dogs?
We were right then. We're right now.
Now, ain't that darling? You're 100% right. All the bubbas in America are wrong.
Governor, you can't believe what you're saying.
Listen to this, Senator. I believe what I need to believe.
You're paraphrasing Macbeth. What I know and what I can redress find overlap first in means, second in interest.
Yep. I knew a man back home in Clio, Alabama, who sold ladies' hats. Real stylish, fair price. But the ladies in town didn't like the hats. Didn't buy them. Now, did he change his stock? Hell no. He said the ladies had no taste. So he went bankrupt. Blamed his customers all the way down.
You're saying voters are customers?
You may be right as rain, but 57% of your customers ain't buying what you're selling. The fish ain't taking the bait.
That was just one election.
My ass. When LBJ signed that damn civil rights bill, he said he was signing away the South for a generation.
You disagree?
A generation's 20 years. You keep this liberal first drivel, you'll kill the Democratic Party for 50 years, maybe more.
We have no choice. Basic freedoms under the Constitution are being denied. We have to fix it.
Virtue is close on the heels of vice. I can quote Shakespeare, too.
You flipped it around, but I take your point.
Yeah. King was brilliant. He picked fights in Birmingham and Selma with two of the dumbest and toughest crackers in the South.
Bull Connor and Jim Clark.
His marshals acted all peaceful in front of the TV cameras.
While they were run down, blown up, and fire-hosed by Alabaman deputies.
Guilty. All the violence was white violence, and we paid the price. 1964 Civil Rights Act, 1965 Voting Rights Act, federal troops in our streets. But this is 1968. Who's violent now? Who is burning down Detroit, Watts, Newark, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Cleveland, Chicago, and Washington, D.C.? Where are the federal troops now?
Riots were sparked by the assassination of Dr. King.
Oh, that shit started long before Memphis. And how in hell can you justify niggers burning down their own homes, king or no king?
Because they don't own their own homes.
That argument may play at some New York City champagne party, but working bubbas sitting in their homes don't get it. They see college students blowing up buildings, burning draft cards, marching on Washington, fighting with police. It's all a culture that working folk don't like.
You and your friends aren't helping me explain it.
Now you're blaming me. You're right. 57% of America's wrong. It's all their fault, or it's all my fault.
What do you want?
I want you to focus on working Americans. That's job one.
I believe I am.
Remember that Jew boy professor I told you about? He called me the other day. Wanted to talk about steel imports. Now, steel is big business in Alabama. Birmingham supplies most of the South. He tells me that's changing. Korea's dumping cheap steel in America. Textiles flooded in too. He says lots of U.S. factories are in trouble.
That won't happen. Our factories are the best in the world.
Strom Thurmond's #1 message is not race. They all yell nigger in Carolina. Strom wants high tariffs on textiles. Makes Republicans appealing in cotton mills down south.
Exactly. We got a labor surplus from the baby boom. We got more foreign competition. Bubba senses it. He's working harder just to tread water. Democratic Party ain't doing nothing.
We won't let factories die.
Your customers don't believe it. They see you got the backs of niggers, women who burn their bras, hippie students waving Viet Cong flags. All of them vote for you. But average working people, the bubbas of America, they voted for me and Tricky Dick.
What do you want?
Pay attention to the Democratic base. Politics is addition, not subtraction.
What do you want specifically?
Complete stop to new Negro laws. Enforce what you got in the books, but nothing new. And no forced busing. Period.
My legacy is civil rights.
And you won! Broke the back of legal segregation. Declare victory and move on.
Move on to what?
Go to bat for working people. Stop this free trade crap. It'll make lots of money for the big boys, but working bubbas get the shaft. Stop foreign governments dumping on us. You want to save factories? Save cities? Save jobs? Do it.
I can do that.
Paint Repubs as the party of big business. Guys who pick your pocket, take your job, and grab your farm fast as Richard Petty. All they care about is money. We care about working folk. Workers are real people. Labor ain't a commodity, it's humanity. For Repubs, workers are line 12 on a balance sheet.
Because they're rich, they think they run the country.
The divine right of money is as false as the divine right of kings.
I can do all that, but I can't walk away from civil rights. If I do, the left will abandon me, and the right will destroy me.
I hear a lot of ifs. My aunt had balls, she'd be my uncle. Fact is, without working class votes, you got nothing.
Negroes already think we're going too slow. If we suddenly stop, we risk rebellion. We must move forward.
You can't go forward if you don't get elected
We
first.
have to move forward, not because of the politics of fear, but because of our own morality.
There's not a spittoon's worth of difference between Eugene Bull Connor and those Black Panther fools. When niggers started burning and shooting, they played right into the Klan's hands.
Oppressing a single American because of his color is not something I will tolerate.
You ask us to be tolerant. Why can't you tolerate Bubba?
Governor, I want your electors, but I will not barter the freedom of 22 million Negroes.
Negroes got more freedom here than any place on God's earth.
I will not compromise Negro dignity.
Working people compromise dignity every day. Take a man's dollar, take his shit too.
America is the leader of the free world, a world challenged by slavery from Europe or Asia or Africa. For us to lead effectively, we must be morally sound. Freedoms we demand abroad must mirror our freedoms at home.
Mr. Vice President, the South needs a pause. Under Roosevelt, Southerners saw government as an ally. Not now. You must repair the party's bond with working people. That's going to take time.
All Americans are the victims of discrimination. This is the nature of man. This is why we have government, to form a more perfect union. I ran for president to advance human dignity. I will fight any man who tries to undermine civil rights.
Mr. Vice President, I doubted we could plow the same dirt, but I had to try.
Voters are more than customers. Political leaders are more than salesmen. Imagine our world if Lincoln or Churchill only did what was popular.
So you're another Lincoln or Churchill?
I'm not selling ladies' hats in Clio, Alabama. Governor, Congress is a complex beast. I know it well. I am prepared to let the Senate and the House decide.
Mr. Vice President, I started work in the Alabama legislature as a page. I was 15 years old. I can smell how a man will vote before the bill hits the floor. My deal is the best offer you're going to get. Good day, gentlemen.
Okay, that's it. Now, I tell you, Ed Clark, we need 2 war rooms, one for Congress, one for the Electoral College. Get whoever you need. Call Larry O'Brien. Count every nose. If a congressman wants to be an ambassador to France, make the deal. If an elector wants their moron kid admitted to West Point, make it happen. Forget Wallace. 26 states, 270 electors. Those are your targets.
Put down your pencils. I just got off the phone with Wallace's campaign manager. Wallace wants to deal. Connolly at Treasury and Wallace at Justice, no new civil rights laws, no changes there. But he'll keep Griswold as Solicitor General and make Richmond Flowers Assistant AG for Civil Rights.
This guy is a genius.
Griswold will defend civil rights to the Supreme Court.
Sir, there are advantages here.
Richmond Flowers is Wallace's #1 political enemy in Alabama. He's pro-civil rights. His son is a football star. Couldn't stay in Alabama because of death threats. Played for Tennessee, made All-America.
Flowers and Griswold help Wallace get confirmed by the Senate. Liberals won't worry about civil rights.
Wallace inoculates himself. Anything Justice does or doesn't do on civil rights will be on their heads, not Wallace.
With Flowers and Griswold, your civil rights agenda is safe. We have more than enough new laws to keep busy for the next 4 years.
Flowers is a good man. He knows all Jim Crow's tricks. He'll help us.
Decision time, Clark.
It's a compromise you can live with.
Ed?
I spoke with Tip O'Neill earlier. The Republican tide is getting worse.
Put the House vote aside. Will Flowers and Griswold protect civil rights?
Griswold is solid. So is Flowers. Okay, I'm in.
Clark, call Turnham Speed. Tell him I need a few hours to think it through. But it sounds good, too, so far. Tell him I'll need a few things. First, I'll want to hear the offer from the governor. He can call me tonight. Second, I'll need to talk to Flowers. phone is okay. Third, the White House will control the budget for the Civil Rights Division. I don't want them starved to death. Second thoughts?
Two of your greatest responsibilities as president are the economy and justice. You're turning both over to men you can't fire.
It's either them or Nixon. There's no decision there. For now, back to the phones. It's not over till it's over.
Wallace was shot. He may be dead.
Where? How?
Get me the Secret Service. First reports are always wrong. Jim, what do we know? Right? Right. All I want to know is Wallace alive or dead? If he's alive, is he critical or not? Get the phone numbers of both agents, wives, and parents to my White House office. Get them to the president, too. Call me as soon as you know more. That was Jim Rowley. Wallace is in an ambulance, condition unknown. One agent dead, another wounded. The shooter is dead.
Jack, Bobby, Martin, now Wallace.
I smell Nixon. His campaign has crazies. They're capable of anything.
Even if Wallace dies, his electors remain pledged to him.
Without Wallace, we can win in the House.
If Wallace is dead, at least 8 of his electors will turn faithless. They'll vote Nixon.
But if we can get the election to the House,
Without
then we can...
Wallace, Southern Democrats vote the party line.
to keep their seniority.
But without Wallace, it won't even get to the House. In 2 days, you'll lose the Electoral College.
Wallace is alive, condition unknown. Shooter was an anti-Castro Cuban.
Nixon has a stable of Cuban thugs. I'm telling you, cui bono.
Ed, we have no hard evidence.
I ain't dead yet.
Governor, that's wonderful news.
How are my 2 agents?
One dead, one wounded. I don't have names. The shooter is dead.
I saw the some bitch hit the ground.
But you're all right?
Bullet in my shoulder hurts like a gator chopped my dick. I'll keep bandaged up through confirmation. No senator will dare vote against me. You dream this up.
Thank God you're okay.
Who? What? Okay. The doctor needs to put me down. Listen, don't call Nixon. Let him hear it on the TV. Gotta go. No, wait. Do we have a deal?
Yes, Governor, we have a deal.
Then give me the needle, Doc. Good night, Lurleen.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Thank you. Now, what do we do?
Well, you could answer the telephone.
That will be limited.
Put him on hold.